This is the Sony MH755 and this is the original CRA. Both were considered market disruptors back in the day, but can they still stack up in the current sci-fi market? Well, here's my list for the best V-shaped IEMs under $100. Let's just jump into it. Starting at the number 5 spot, we have the Kiwi Ears Dulce. Yes, I'm gonna pronounce it Dulce, and the CRA Plus. Both are very similar in their tuning in that they're both very upper mids and treble focused, the most treble and energetic set out of the bunch on the list. The main difference comes down to the vocal presentation, where the CRA Plus is more forward and the Dulce is more pushed back and more extended and open. Personally, I like the Dulce's presentation more because it just kills my ears less versus the CRA Plus, where it can get too exciting and too energetic with the vocals being too forward along with just the boosted treble. If you want the most exciting signature out of all the V shapes, then these two are it. They are the most energetic, they're the most lively, and have the most treble, but I do not recommend blasting them up because you will kill your ears. And if you're looking for the most airy V shape, then these two also fit the criteria, and I do recommend putting a mesh filter on top to help tame the upper mids, so it does scale a little bit better in that regards, but the treble is still going to be around the same. So yeah, even with the filter, it's still going to be a problem at higher volumes, but at mid volume, it's still going to be very fun, exciting, and perfectly fine. Next, at the number 4 spot, we have the original CRA. And yes, I know, hot take, many of you guys have thought that this might be higher up on the list, but there are some small issues. The overall sound of the CRA is very bright and electrifying, and although it's more balanced than the CRA Plus and the Dulce, the upper mids do still become an issue at higher volumes. The extra bit of bass does help balance out the upper mids and treble compared to the CRA Plus, but it's still a bit too much for my sensitive little ears here. However, I do recommend putting on a Tanya filter, and that fixes most of the problems in the upper mids and bumps this way up on the list and becomes way more enjoyable. Moving on, in third place, we have the KZ Linglong. Now, it's going to be very similar like the rest of them, V-shaped, exciting, fun, so I'm not going to repeat the signature moving forward. However, the main issue in the Linglong is that the gain region in the 1 to 3K is just too much for vocals combined with the extra treble and V-shaped tuning. The energy is more so in the vocals rather than the upper mids and early treble versus the CRA, which is why it's a little bit higher than the CRA for me. KZ definitely should have smoothened out the gain region, but then again, this isn't their first time shooting themselves in the foot, so either way, female vocals are going to be a bit too much, a little bit too bright and energetic on J-pop and J-rock and K-pop and stuff like that. But then again, you can also put a filter on top of them. Spoiler, you can filter out most of these IEMs, but more on that later. Now, if you do want a V-shaped signature that scales very well, then I do recommend the M2 from HifiGuides, which is basically a darker MH755 in the treble setting with Olina filters. The downside to this is that it does cost $80 and a lot more than all the other sets on this list. You do get a lot of variety, and the bass switch reminds me of the Quartet but with more bass, so if you want to mess around with it, then yeah, I would recommend giving it a shot. But just don't listen to it stock because the upper mids are just way too much. You need to either put a filter on or put it on the bass setting, which is why it only gets a honorable mention because of the price and the gymnastics around it. That aside, at the number 2 spot, we have the Tongzu Chang'e. Simply put, the Chang'e tames the upper mids from the CRA and it tames the treble from the CRA Plus and also smoothen out the gain area in the Linglong, so it's basically just a MH755. But here's where things get tricky. So with the filters applied, all the IEMs aside from the CRA Plus and the Dulce actually sound very similar to the Chang'e, so the only really difference comes down to availability and price. As for the original CRA, you can't get them anymore because KZ silently killed them because they're idiots. And as for the Linglong, you do have to pay a little bit more for the filters, but I guess technically you do get 2 different tunings. But then again, you also get 2 different tunings from the Chang'e if you filter mod it as well. So after pondering this heavy philosophical question of to filter or not to filter, I finally arrived at a profound conclusion of fuck KZ. Honestly, who knows if they're gonna silent retune this or whatever, so your safer choice is to just get the Chang'e. Plus, it also looks nicer, so. But as for the number 1 spot, no surprise, the OG, the legend, the Sony MH755/750s. Still the king after all these years. They are slightly better than the Chang'e because it does have a little bit more treble air. You can't really mod the treble to have more air, so that's why it's a bit above the Chang'e in that regards. The downside is that it's gonna be very hard to find real ones and you might get scammed along the way, so safer bet is just to get the Chang'e. That aside, if you're looking to upgrade, then go check out the Quintet, but Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video.